Some of the providers, after reading about Flexible Virtualization Benefit, which is almost 2 years old now, started asking questions. Shall we maybe get rid of SPLA? Do we need SPLA to provide our hosting services? I need to introduce myself. I'm the leader, the founder of the company called SAMexpert. We do lots of things about Microsoft-related cost management and business management consultancy. Half of what we do is we support service providers. I am myself also, as one of the founders of the company, responsible for that particular track, working and supporting service providers, hosting providers, SaaS providers. That's what we do. We are going to talk about breaking free from Microsoft SPLA. It's probably not obvious, but if you're a service provider, it's an absolute possibility. We can do that. Some of the providers, after reading about Flexible Virtualization Benefit, which is almost 2 years old now, started asking questions. Shall we maybe get rid of SPLA? Do we need SPLA to provide our hosting services? Is it possible? They see the economic advantages, which we'll discuss. I'll talk about it. They see the problems with SPLA and that Microsoft completely lost interest in SPLA. It's still active. It will survive for another 5 years. That's what Microsoft guarantees. But you can kind of see that Microsoft stopped caring about it. And if you want to build a relationship as a Microsoft partner with Microsoft, you should play by their rules. You should please those account managers you're working with. They need to get bonuses from their sales, and nobody gets bonuses from SPLA. So, is it possible to get rid of SPLA? Yes, but there are certain limitations. The questions we get from service providers are like this. We are a SaaS company. Can we improve the bottom line? And absolutely you can, by choosing the right licensing program. Or we are a CSP and we want to maximize the bottom line of managing CSP and selling CSP licenses. By all means, there's a way, if you're a service provider, to increase your CSP revenue. There are caveats, which we'll discuss, but it's absolutely possible. Or Microsoft's local office is pushing us away from SPLA. They want to move our clients to Azure, if not to Azure, but just to CSP. Again, it's the question from the same area from a live client. SPLA is expensive. Audits are scary. Audits are difficult. SPLA audits are confusing. We support at least 10 audits a year on the client side, not on the Microsoft side, don't take me wrong. And they are frustrating. They're difficult. And that's another reason to get rid of SPLA or at least limit the SPLA's exposure. Clients can be insisting on bringing your own license. This is happening all the time, and you need to know how it works. You can't just jump into BYL without understanding how it affects your compliance, for example. But again, it's possible. So you could break free partially or completely from SPLA. There are tools provided by Microsoft itself. We're not talking about shortcuts. We're not talking about workarounds. These are actual tools provided by Microsoft. It's so complicated. Finding those little bits of information is difficult. Therefore, you come to us. And you ask us these questions, and we tell you how to do it. What are the options if you want to break away from a SPLA? If you're a service provider, or if you're a SaaS company, if you're a hosting provider, and you want to get rid or reduce SPLA in your estate, and potentially you can get rid of it entirely. The thing that is available to everybody, to every provider, regardless of what kind of business that provider does, is the Flexible Virtualization Benefit. It's been around already for a year and a half at least. It was announced in October 2022, introduced in October 2022, which basically says any license with software assurance or on a subscription, including CSP subscriptions, may be brought to any service provider with a shared or dedicated hardware, unless that provider is Amazon, Google, or Alibaba. Azure is also in that list. However, as it's Microsoft, of course they kept some backdoors for themselves. Of course. Azure Hybrid Use Benefit, other solutions. So what you need to remember is that if, for example, as a service provider, and we do have clients who are such service providers, you use Google's infrastructure to host your end clients, then that doesn't work for you. Then Flexible Virtualization Benefit does not apply, because whether directly on Google or via a partner but still hosted on Google, that is prohibited. But unless you are hosting that on Google, Amazon, or Alibaba, there are no more verification forms. There's no more verification process. We still advise you to do it, but it's not a requirement anymore. And therefore, flexible virtualization benefit is available to everyone. But we have a very interesting niche in the provider business, which are SaaS companies that host applications in their own data centers, or they rent rack space from somewhere. I know, OVH, Aruba, Rackspace, GoDaddy, Kyndryl, Oracle Cloud. So not those listed providers. They rent hardware from those providers and they want to improve the bottom line. Can they do that? Yes. There's a self-hosting benefit for SaaS companies. Let's talk about the benefits, like why. Not just why you want to go off SPLA, but why would you pursue alternative licensing routes? And with self-hosting for SaaS companies, it's actually pretty obvious. Volume licenses must be with software assurance or subscription, but they are cheaper than SPLA. They are significantly cheaper than SPLA. So your bottom line looks better if you use self-hosting options. If you organize it properly, if you tick all the boxes, all the requirements for self-hosting, they cost less. And that may not be that obvious that Microsoft audits providers more frequently than non-providers. As soon as you get out of the SPLA scope, as soon as with your SaaS solution, you go on your self-hosted licenses, which are acquired through traditional channels, CSP or enterprise agreement or MPSA, any other channels, then you are no more on the radar of the audit department that goes after providers. The risk of the audit is going down. We can't guarantee that Microsoft won't go back to the practice of auditing end clients, but as it stands right now, for a few years already, that is the case. The focus of the audits is on the providers. With flexible virtualization benefit that is available to everybody, is you're not reporting SPLA licenses, you don't have inbound license costs, and it may reduce the cost for the end client. Because if they already have licenses, they don't need to pay for SPLA. They don't need to buy new licenses. They can just bring the licenses that are eligible and deploy them in your infrastructure. So it may be more interesting for them. You can show them cost of a VM with their license, which will not include the SPLA costs, which improves your competitive position. And on the other hand, if they need to buy licenses, and many providers are CSPs, many providers resell CSP licenses, then you can sell them these CSP licenses. And it should be absolutely obvious that when they procure licenses from you, your CSP bottom line is improving. It affects your bottom line in a positive way. So how to, and can you do that? Because not everybody can do it, and not everybody can completely get rid of SPLA, but anybody can reduce the exposure of a SPLA on their estate by pursuing these two options. And just so you understand, I'm talking about live scenarios here, not theoretical. We consult providers on this. And this is a result of months and months of practice and thinking and concluding and mistakes that were made by us or by clients and then corrected. All of this is practical knowledge. For self-hosting, there are quite confusing rules on the Microsoft's website. If you know how to read Microsoft licensing documentation, you will be able to read them, you will be able to understand them. Not rocket science, but let me digest them to make them as humanely digestible as possible. Point number one, intellectual property must belong to the SaaS providers. So self-hosting is for SaaS and ISVs, for SaaS companies that host themselves. Intellectual property must belong to you. If you are hosting, for example, a hypothetical ServiceNow or another tool that is not produced by you, that you license from somebody else, from your partner, from a different vendor, then self-hosting won't work. It's called self-hosting. You are hosting your own solution, you're self-hosting. So the solution must be in-house. You must own it. Microsoft products that you use must be eligible. But normally, when we work with SaaS companies, there's Windows Server and there is SQL Server. If there is Windows Server and SQL Server that support their SaaS solution and there's no SharePoint, no Exchange, no Office involved directly or indirectly, then the solution is eligible for self-hosting. How can you make sure that your solution is eligible? You need to go to the product terms website, or you can DM me and I'll give you a list of products that are eligible for self-hosting. Don't hesitate if you have any questions. Find me on LinkedIn, send me a DM. I'll send you that checklist, pre-digested. Otherwise, you'll have to go through each and every product. There's no list like that on the Microsoft Product Terms website. Obviously, you can't provide remote desktop access, so it must be a web application. That's the third point. It must be a web application. No legacy apps. Because one of the rules of self-hosting is no direct access to Microsoft products. And when you provide remote desktop, you provide direct access to Windows Server. So in that case, it won't be eligible. Again, the majority of the SaaS companies we work with are eligible in that regard. In regard to licenses, it will be OPEX. You can't use second-hand licenses in Europe. You can't use perpetual licenses. You can't use perpetual CSP because self-hosting is a software assurance benefit. The licenses must be with software assurance or CSP subscriptions. They work too. Your revenue improves. Microsoft recognizes you because you use volume licenses for which Microsoft local sales representatives are recognized, unlike SPLA, and fewer audits. Let me reiterate these rules. IP, intellectual property must be yours, products must be eligible, no remote desktop, no direct access, licenses must be with software assurance. You see, it's quite restrictive. It is designed for SaaS companies. Flexible virtualization benefit works for any hosting provider. That benefit doesn't have that many restrictions. It's almost unrestricted, almost. The only restriction for the flexible virtualization benefit, which is a bring your own license program, is that the licenses that your end clients bring on your platform, and you can sell that to them and host it for them, they just need to be on a subscription or with active software assurance, which is what another subscription. That's it. There is no need to become a CSP hoster. Don't make that mistake. There are benefits to the CSP hoster program, but it's not flexible virtualization benefit. And be aware, we hear recently auditors during audits telling clients that they must become a CSP hoster to provide flexible virtualization benefit or host Office 365. That is a lie. There's no better way of putting it. That is a lie. You don't need to become a CSP hoster. This is a right given to the end clients, which says that unless the provider is Google, Alibaba, or Amazon, they can take the subscription licenses to any provider, shared or dedicated. No authorization is required. And all Microsoft products work. If in the self-hosting scenario, there's a limited subset of products, flexible virtualization benefit applies to every product. So hypothetically, imagine this. You can build a completely new infrastructure, running it alongside your legacy SPLA infrastructure, and slowly migrate clients to this new infrastructure where everything, including even Windows Server, could be licensed with CSP licenses that your end clients bring or buy from you, and no SPLA. It's absolutely possible, and we're working with a few providers right now on how to build it in their particular scenario with their limitations, with their client base, how they configure the services. Because yes, there are obstacles to that, which need to be either overcome or a workaround of a mixed licensing can be found. Talking about obstacles, one of the biggest is that if you use Hyper-V, you can't go 100% flexible virtualization benefit. Unfortunately, if your hosted infrastructure runs on Hyper-V, you would have to report Windows Server through SPLA. So you can't have 100% pure, pristine, flexible virtualization benefit BYOL infrastructure. There's an element of SPLA that will still be required. But as long as you are on KVM, Nutanix, excuse me for mentioning VMware, then in that case, you're not bound by the terms of licensing of the operating system of the host, and flexible virtualization benefit allows you to license virtual machines with Windows Server licenses per virtual machine. There you go. No SPLA, if you want to. Absolutely possible. Other things that may be a problem, things like hosted exchange or any other shared virtual machine. So in that case, shared virtual machines need to be moved to a completely different infrastructure. Separate infrastructure, separate hosts, which will still have to remain under SPLA. Because when it's shared, it must be SPLA, unfortunately. There's no workaround for that. I'll remind you again that if you need a cheat sheet, please DM me on LinkedIn. If you want more information, the list of products for self-hosting, I'll send you either cheat sheets or links to the articles, other material. Just let me know what you want. I'll announce the next event. So we're going to have another SPLA event in 2 weeks where we will talk about SPLA audits, starting from the very beginning. What to do, what not to do at the first steps. When you receive a notice, what are your rights, what are your obligations? I'll give you peace of mind because everybody gets frustrated and agitated and scared when they receive the notice from Microsoft. But if you play it well, there's no reason to be scared. And on that note, thank you very much for being here today. I'm your host, Alexander Golev from SAMexpert, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Same time, Wednesday, 3 o'clock on the next audio event. Have a great day and goodbye.